We're back. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. We are now joined by 9th District U.S. Congressman Doug Collins. Congressman Collins, how are you today?
I'm great, Brian. Hope all are.
Well, we're so sad that you have to leave Georgia and head back to D.C., but we know you got to go to work.
If I could do it from the friendly confines of the 9th District, that would be great. But I ran to go represent in the Washington, so I guess I got to go that way.
Congressman, let's there's three things in our short time we have this morning. Could you just share with us a brief comments from yourself, maybe personally, and some things legislatively or some things getting talked about in the House as far as what's going on and some of the rhetoric we're hearing, what's going on in this country with slain police officers in Dallas and some of the racial tension that's happening in this country?
I do. It's heartbreaking. I was just at drill this weekend. I'm still in the Air Force Service, and I had drill this weekend. And we actually had some conversation about, this that was going on. And really what we're looking at right now is very tragic, both sides. And look, I've always, my father's a state trooper. I am, been around law enforcement community all my life, but also been in a lot of different areas. And look, when officers do wrong, they need to be punished. And there needs to be more dialogue. There needs to be, I believe, more, in the way of understanding the arenas and understanding the different areas in which our police are working in, but it has to be reciprocal. There also has to be an understanding of rule of law. And, the issues that we have are not going to be solved by legislation. They're not going to be solved by, banning a certain gun or doing anything like that. They're going to have to come from an understanding that evil exists in the world and that evil needs to be punished. And that we as human beings, I believe personally, are gifted by our Creator to be very special. And I think we've got to begin to focus on those things that matter to us as humanity. And when we do that, those are not legislative issues. Those are matters of the heart and faith, and we're going to continue to work on them.
Well, we know recently that the Democrats have made several efforts to try to get gun legislation on the floor. Is there anything going to happen where that's concerned, or what kind of trouble are they going to continue to cause as far as stopping progress on the floor of the House?
That'll be interesting. It could happen again this week, this being the last week for this part of July. They may try to do something, but I think the shootings in Dallas, frankly, made it, again, put this in perspective of a total problem that we've got to deal with on all angles. The problem I have with most of the Democrat legislation that they're wanting to deal with has nothing to do with stopping any of the events that they talk about. And, when you deal with that, that is the certain point of lying to the American people, that you may want to vote on a bill that you say, this is what we want to vote on, and then you claim that it would have solved these other issues. It would have not. And I think that's the problem that many of us have in this situation. You're wanting to take away a constitutional right of due process, but a constitutional right of freedom to bear arms, but you're wanting to do so under false pretense and not at least just admit it's a legislative political agenda and not one that would actually, at the end of the day, solve the problems that are going on right now, not only in these shootings that we hear about, but what about the shootings in Chicago, the shootings in other major cities where you're having, the crimes that are being committed right now that are dealing in neighborhoods? You don't hear about those. They're simply wanting to make political points in other ways, and that's sad. It shouldn't be that way. I think Speaker Ryan got it right when he said it was a publicity stunt. I was on the floor. I was in the chair when this was yelling and going on. In fact, I actually adjourned the House the night after we passed our legislation. And it's just sad because the minute while it was going on, people were trying to raise money. Members were trying to raise money off what they were doing. And that's just wrong. And I know there's some investigations going into that.
Well, Congressman, also on that note, in this past weekend, some of the things, how do you feel about, Hillary Clinton and somewhat there's a blame for on white people. White people are not listening to the black community. It seems like that they're drawing more of the racial divide in this whole conversation, bringing this up, and then somehow it has been twisted around to where it's starting to sound like people are talking about nationalizing the police. I mean, have you heard these two things this past weekend and some of the rhetoric going on, and what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, definitely in the sharp racial rhetoric. Yes, we've heard that, and that's tragic. I mean, we're all humans, and and every person is infinitely valuable in the eyes of God. And I think this is very tragic that we try to. Are there real issues? Yes, there are real issues. There are real issues that we have to deal with, and the perceptions that many times the black community has in their own communities, dealing with the social and economic issues that they deal with. Those are very real. We need to be listening more than we're talking, and I think that's something that would help us all in trying to bridge these gaps. But also when you look at it from the perspective of the political rhetoric, and you look at it from the actual solving of issues, I think then we've got to actually begin to move toward areas in which we can really just find agreement on it and say, okay, what can we do that actually helps, and instead of generating false expectations and false hope that lead to more problems down the line.
Congressman, just changing gears here a little bit, and I will tell you, I have actually heard people say it was as equal. I don't know if that. Wait a minute, it wasn't equal, but it was somewhat the same thing as when people were glued to their TV sets, wanting to know what the verdict was going to be with O.J. And here we sit to a 14-minute indictment by Comey. We sit with a 14-minute indictment by Comey that we heard, and we thought that would, next thing we're going to hear is the indictment. And then obviously he says, she had no intent, Hillary Clinton, the presumptive Democrat nominee. And then also this past week, what was your thought of the outcome of the hearings, of the Capitol Hill hearing with Comey and Trey Gowdy and Congressman Chaffetz?
Well, I think the whole issue is, I'm like you. I mean, for him to actually say that there was no fact pattern in which this had been prosecuted for, I think simply the only problem with that statement is that the name of the person in the fact pattern being used. I mean, I'm in the military. I'm in government. I mean, even when I have to, and I deal in, we have to deal with top secret briefings or other things. We still even have to sign another paper saying, here's what we can't say, here's what we can say. We in the military, which I was, like I said, was just even this past weekend. I've known people who lose careers over having sent information that is not even, especially compartmented information, who have sent those issues and have gotten career marked and taken against them, and not to mention prosecution in some other areas. So I think the problem we have here is, and I think Trey brought this out very well. It wasn't an issue of intent. She intended to have the servers. She intended to know what those emails were. She was briefed. I mean, she knew this. I think the frustrating part is it was another example, for the American public to look at and say that there's an unequal standard of justice here, and that's very frustrating.
Well, Congressman, what the mishandling of the truth. That's the nice way I'm gonna put it. The mishandling of the truth.
Yeah.
These are things we wouldn't accept from our children, and we just wouldn't. And we try to raise our children up to discuss the truth and lies and honesty and where it's supposed to get you, and it's not supposed to be president of the United States.
No, I agree with you in that regard. And I think that's the part that again. There was an interesting article. I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree, but it was an interesting article that Charles Krauthammer wrote about Comey's decision, and it was, we're going to tell you everything bad that she did, and she did a lot of things wrong and bad, but at the same point in time, we're not going to let the FBI be perceived as used as a political instrument. And I think that was wrong. I think their job is not to worry about whether they're perceived as a political instrument or not. Their job is to do the investigation and give the Justice Department the facts and say, here's what we found, here's what you could do, you're the prosecutors, now you decide. When he said that no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case, and to me, he went way outside the bounds of his job. And that's not his job. His job was to do the investigation, present his findings, and say, okay, look, I know a lot of U.S. attorneys and prosecutors in the Justice Department who have said, they've had cases in which the law enforcement, the FBI or others have said, there may not be enough case here. And he says, oh, yeah, there is. And they would take the case and make the case. That's where I had the biggest, very much frustration with Comey, who I believe is a man of integrity. I think this was just a bad call. And I think he was trying to maybe split a hair that is not his job to split.
Congressman, the talking point on the Sunday shows was Hillary admitted she made a mistake and she learned from it. That's what we really need in a commander-in-chief, is somebody that can make that ultimate mistake, and it may be too late to learn from it. So that's interesting. Going into, our time is short, going into the weekend, we're going to the Republican convention. Long awaited, time to go to Cleveland. You met with Donald Trump, a group of representatives, about 200 plus, met with Donald Trump. Share with us a little bit about inside that meeting and your takeaway and how you feel about the upcoming week.
Well, I think the meeting was good. I think Donald came in; he was comfortable. He was the good thing that you like or dislike, and personally, I think it's a good thing. He is himself, no matter where he is, and he's going to say what he feels. He did that in the meeting. He talked about our need for our economy, our borders, our immigration issues. He spoke about those things, but he also spoke in the fact of just sort of representing these values of people who feel like the system is not working as it should. So my hope is that we come together. There's still a lot of things. My hope is as we move forward through the convention next week, we see the unifying themes of strong defense, economic prosperity, the things that we can do to get regulatory burden out of the way. And also one of the big things that he did spend a lot of time talking about was the thing that I think has got to come to mind to voters as we look ahead is the fact of the Supreme Court. And within the next couple of years, at least the next 4 years, you could have as many as 4, if not 5, Supreme Court justices nominated. And so that's a huge. And he brought that up, and I was glad to see that. It's not something from his background, but he's trusting those that I believe a lot of us trust to vet the proper judges.
And he has released a very impressive list of potential nominees to the court that many are happy with. Congressman, we wish you well this week, but I have to ask you: Have you heard any? You got any behind the scenes VP talk on the Donald?
well, Brian, they called and they wanted your phone number.
That's what I was saying. That's what I'm just checking.
He's got a big show he's doing live every day. I'm not sure he's got time for
All right. You knew where I was going, right? You knew where I was going. What is the number one thing you have to deal with this week up there that that you want to leave our viewers and listeners with before we go, Congressman?
I think the biggest things we're dealing with is we're tying up some issues that we've had with Iran. We're tying up a few issues on spending bills. We're not where I want to be. In fact, I'm frustrated, but we'll see where that goes. And also, I think this week is going to be combating some bad ideas. So I'm hopeful that's what we'll be able to do, and we'll be able to move from there.
Congressman, thank you very much. We wish you well, and we wish you well and safe flight up to D.C. and back home to Georgia.
Thanks so much. Talk to y'all later.
All right. That's Congressman Doug Collins, 9th District here in Georgia. We're going to take a brief break. Sheriff Stacey Nicholson will be with us here as soon as we're done. So that's Congressman Doug Collins. I'm glad he understood, right, Lonnie, that I'm should be on the VP shortlist. How do you like that, right? Somebody that understands. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office. We'll be back after these brief messages. Lonnie, take us to break.